Well, since the Nazis could go into space, they started to do so, and they found out very quickly that it can be a rough place. So they began to develop the alliances that they had made through the Vril Society, and really started to make deals so they could go to the moon and set up a base, visit Mars, set up a base, without having any pushback from the people that were already there. They cut a deal with the Draco that allowed them to not only stay in large caverns in Antarctica, but also on the moon. And where they ended up setting up it was a base, it looked like a swastika, but it was not as big as they've shown on television and in movies. They were above ground. It was almost like shipping container size, and they were in the form of a swastika. Yeah, that's the nasty group they worked the closest with, because they had the same polarity or alignment. Of course, this all began through a channeling group, the Vril Society. And I think they found the most unattractive women they could to be on the in the society. Vashta put together these few pieces of art here to depict, and that should not be a black sun symbol behind her. It should be a Vril symbol. But this shows the technology of the Vril machines. They were extremely advanced. The Vril Society, they were not wanting to create this type of technology for war. They were looking to expand their knowledge and to bring spiritual knowledge to people as well. That's why they were more interested in the contacts they had with the Nordic groups. Once they had been in contact with the reptilians, they then started to contact people in associated societies, and then the Nazis found out about it very quickly, and they were brought in and questioned heavily. Okay, and something that I know is a bit controversial is back during the time that we were having all these visitations, I guess, men in black type people started to track the vessels that were visiting people and giving them knowledge. And one of them was, as Dr. Sala stated, a person named Sanjasi had been visiting people and imparting some very positive spiritual information to them. And it was far beyond where we were consciously. So it was coming from somewhere else. It was not information that someone had sat and wrote a little manuscript and said, I want to create a new religion. And of course, they went, and people that were having these visitations, they would go and show them photographs. And there were a couple that were convinced that the picture of Maria Orsic was the person that they had met named Sanjasi. The description is pretty uncanny.
You mentioned that secret space program, or the Nazis originally had questioned the Vril girls. What came of that questioning, and what happened to them, and from your understanding, and how they didn't rein them in or control them, or what happened to them?
Well, they were very well connected with other societies. So the Nazis couldn't really just, pull them in by their hair and make them do what they wanted them to do. They had friends in high places. So
who, and like in what kind of high places? I mean, were they Nazi assets, or they were already traveling in outer space?
They had connections to people that were high up in the Nazi party and in other societies. They worked closely with them, so they had friends in high places. So it'd be very difficult for the SS to just grab them and throw them in an internment camp or something like that. They had too many friends.
So they questioned them and then released them. And what happened? Was the girls did they each have their own ship? Was this supported by Vril society groups that were traveling autonomously, separate from the Nazi parties?
Yes, they were autonomous from the Nazi party. They provided the Nazi party with the information that was requested. They put them in contact with non-terrestrial groups. They provided them with copies of all their schematics of their ships. But they had very wealthy donors that helped them build out their program, and their program was non-military. It was to go out and explore, and they were very interested in the spiritual aspects of what was going on. They were not looking, the answers they were looking for were more of a spiritual or esoteric nature.
Right.
So even though they were German during the time of World War II, when the Nazis were in control, they were very opposed to that way of thinking and that energy. They had to work with the Nazis a little bit, but as soon as they had their own craft built, their own space fleet, they were broken away. And they did have a small base down in the Antarctic area and in South America, but it was not associated with the Nazi group.
And they were left alone, the Dracos and the other groups that were working kind of counterproductively in Antarctica. They were, if they were a very small Earth-based civilization, or did they have protection from other higher spiritual forces? They
were working closely with some of the Nordic groups.
Okay. So positive Nordic groups.
Right. And they received a lot of spiritual information and teachings from these groups, and they were adamant about sharing it with humanity, but they could not, under the confines of what the Nazis and Americans had agreed upon. If they were to appear as Earth humans and start imparting this knowledge openly, they would then be in conflict with these military-industrial groups.
So they had to pose that as extraterrestrials.
Correct.
Now, do we know, do they have bases in the Pleiades and things of that nature? Were they in contact with groups and had bases?
They were in contact with groups, but the bases they had were here. But they did travel outside of the solar system for a number of years. As Sala said, they were gone for a number of years. They came back, and then, I believe it was the early 70s, they disappeared again. So apparently, either the certain people they were tracking died, or they went off planet and out of the solar system.
And so that was the last we heard of them in the early 70s?
Yeah, it was in the 70s. I think it was the early 70s. I'm not sure.
Okay, well, and Fred, the experiences I were having with the ships, and I had many sightings of ships with Fred and around the house and in various situations, were in the late 70s and into the 80s. So the other question is they're very young. Do they have the magic pill that William Tompkins talks about? Was that developed at that time?
Yes, the Germans had access to age regression technology from the reptilians very early.
Very early?
Yes, very early in their program. It was handed over, but if you hand over a technology like that, you have to go through a R&D. They have to break it down. Even though they are told exactly how it works, they've got to marry that with their current knowledge and understanding of technology and chemistry, the human body. So there was a number of years to where they had to close the gap knowledge-wise. Just like if we were to have full disclosure today and they were to disclose all of these technologies would not be in our hands for several years. It would take that amount of time for them to start to develop it in the numbers that would be needed for 7 billion people.
why didn't they give that, the Nazis, Hitler was kind of the big guy, why didn't they give that to him?
The reptilians?
Or, well, the secret space program and the Nazi group, why didn't they give that, the youthful aspect to Hitler? Or he was just a figurehead and there was actually another group, or?
Yeah, Hitler was not that important to the process of what was going on. He was, like Dr. Sala said, he was more like a figurehead or a puppet. A lot of the people in these societies were what was really running everything.
Right, so it's kind of like he wasn't really the Darth Vader. It's like when the Dracos came in, they go, "Ooh, that's a more powerful figure that they were attracted to vibrationally."